Baseball, it truly is America's game. If you think about it, yes, it's had a long tradition of apple pie, baseball, and your mom. Those are sort of what defines us as Americans in a lot of ways, especially in the summertime. And this is where that started.
I like the activity of it. I like the challenge, the hitting and the pitching. Win or lose, it's a total win. Remembering the history, it brings us back to a time when maybe things were simpler.
It's very similar to what baseball was when it started out. You don't have a glove, you don't have a mask, you don't have any of that.
This isn't just playing baseball. This is taking a step back into history and honoring the game, not just stepping on the field and playing the game.
Go, Butcher, go! Down!
So I think my favorite part of watching this era of baseball as opposed to modern is the fact that you get to more understand the roots. So modern baseball, it's basically you know the rules as it stands, but now you understand why those rules are as it is.
There are no gloves, no masks, chest protector, helmets, shin guards, no equipment except a bat and ball. Those are the differences between 1864 and today. There's 90-foot bases. There are 3 outs. Everything's pretty much the same.
I think it's kind of interesting that they don't wear gloves and that you can actually get a player out off of a bounce. If a ball's in the air, you don't have to actually catch it in the air. You can actually catch it on the bounce and still get the player out.
My favorite aspect of playing with these rules as opposed to modern rules is that I do think that the vintage rules are an equalizer. And what I mean by that is that I'm in my 40s. If I were playing with some of the same people in modern baseball, I wouldn't be able to keep up anymore. So the fact that the play is a little slower, the fact that the ball reacts a little different, the lack of a glove ends up being an equalizer to allow an elite athlete in their 20s and folks in their 50s to play on the same team field and to actually belong on the same field together.
We play by any rules at any time as long as they're historically accurate. Most of our regular dates are going to be double headers where if a team shows up and they're an 1864 team, for example, we'll play an 1864 game and then an 1884 game. There are a lot of teams that do have trouble adjusting. For example, the 1884 game is overhand, it's a fly game. It looks like modern baseball with some different rules. Whereas the 1860s game, if you catch a ball on a bounce, it's an out. Guys forget that they're playing that era, they don't know when to run. The longer guys play, the more they become accustomed to it.
I get a lot of different types of reactions when I tell people I play vintage baseball. Usually the first one is they ask, what does that mean? And I usually start by explaining some of the rule differences. And a lot of them think that I'm a little crazy for doing it. And they're concerned about injuries, obviously, which there really aren't that many.
Probably very hard to play this game without jamming a finger. I think I've jammed all 10 of them at least once or twice. Injuries are not very common, but you'll see somebody every now and then tear up a hamstring or something in the leg. Sliding usually more than anything else. Sliding can be a problem.
There's actually several components that make it a lot more dangerous. These are natural turf fields. If you look, you can see that the field is not level. There's hills, there's grassy knolls, there's mole holes, so you could be running for a ball, take a bad toe in that non-turf field and end up with a twisted knee, broken ankle. They're sliding, they're stealing bases, so you run the risk of torso injuries, facial injuries, plus getting hit in the face with a ball or hitting the body with the ball. These are very hard little balls. When I was thinking about playing on the team, the very first practice I ever went to, I took a hard line drive to the forearm and had a bruise for a week and a half. I've treated heat exhaustion here, we've had dislocated shoulders, there was a dislocated finger this morning.
One of the biggest risks is easily dislocating fingers, so this doesn't supposed to go out here. There's normal risk involved whenever you play modern baseball, so I dislocated my shoulder just like any other player would when they're sliding. Because you don't have a glove, there's really the only opportunity to stop the ball from hitting your face is your hands, and that will still hurt. So the risks are different, but there's still risk involved when you're playing a sport like this.
Most people get their nickname by profession. My nickname is Pick. I'm a locksmith.
My nickname is Scoop. Got the nickname because I used to work for a newspaper when I first started. So you kind of scoop stories and scoop grounders, so put that all together.
My nickname is Bats because I used to be the bat boy. When my dad played, I wanted to be more involved in the games, didn't like sitting on the sidelines that much, so they gave me the job of being the bat boy.
My nickname is Granddad because I'm by far the oldest player on the team, and I do have grandchildren. So when we were picking nicknames, that was how I got my nickname.
My nickname is Powder. Early on last season, before the game, I was putting on a lot of sunscreen. I didn't totally rub it in, so I looked like a ghost, and I got the nickname Powder from that.
The deal behind the uniforms has to deal with the history behind them. So back in the 1800s, it kind of depended where the team formulated. So if it was a major league team, usually those were the teams that traveled. They were the teams that had money. So they're probably the more modern looking uniforms, so to speak. If you had more of a homegrown team, you'll see teams with just Dickies and maybe a flannel t-shirt. So you'll see everything from, you'll have the belts to the full hats. You know, like I said, it all kind of depends on that history.
I started a team years ago called the Liberty. We call them Liberty of Connecticut. But the Liberty team, I found the historical records that there was a team called the Liberty of Norwalk, Connecticut. There was no record that I found of the look of the uniform, so I created the uniform and I took liberty in creating the uniform because you can't tell me this isn't what they wore because we don't have pictures. It's a fancy uniform, the blue and the red. I zipped it up, embroidered the stuff, and went with the American theme and Liberty, red, white, and blue.
We're a team that wears 100% wool uniforms, so the heat is something that we've been used to. This is the 22nd year our team's been in existence, 20th year for myself, and we've just grown accustomed to the extra heat. I'm not gonna lie and say it wasn't unbearable at times. I'm not gonna say that there weren't guys who were gassed, but we've learned to deal with heat by just sucking up and dealing with it.
We have also hay-filled bags. A lot of people aren't used to that. The ball is also entirely different. It's a little bit bigger than the size of a modern baseball. It's also a little bit softer, but I assure you if you get hit by it, it still hurts.
This ball has a lot more bounce, a lot more jump to it than the modern game ball. The modern game ball's got more pop because it's solid, harder ball. It'll travel further. This one's made to not travel as far and be easier to catch.
You don't have a glove to help you out there. You're not using a bat that is warmed up. You're not using a ball that is juiced. You're using a ball like they would have used in a wooden bat. Since I'm so old, they made a bat for me. It's 34 inches, 33 ounces, which is heavier than a lot of guys in the major leagues are swinging. These guys are swinging heavier bats than that.
Every bat I make is by hand. I've had people come with certain requests. I had one person come to me and say, I want the longest, thickest, heaviest bat that's legal. And he came to my shop and I made it for him.
I keep trying to find a bat that could be made 48 inches long, but nobody has a lathe that'll make it. But my bat maker just made one that was like almost 45 inches long, and that's what I have. And it's substantial, it's got a great knob, but it's just there to remind people the style and the substance of the bats in the early days. They were big and long, heavy. Sometimes they would use a wood, a willow wood they'd call it. It was a lighter wood, or oak, or ash, or hickory, or whatever they did. But the point being is that that's what they had. They had some very unique bats. If you saw any bat from back then, it will not remind you of a bat today. The bats of today are styled and shaped very different than what they did in the early days, very different. So that's the biggest thing, is you go around here, look at the bats, they should not remind you of a modern bat.
From what I've noticed, there's sort of three different mentalities in vintage baseball. There's your regular everyday weekend games, you know, Sundays throughout the season. Then you have festivals like this, which are non-tiered, non-competitive. And then you have the tournaments. Those are where it starts getting really kind of very cutthroat. You see a lot more interpretation. You see the members of the teams and their telekeepers and, you know, talking and interacting with the spectators and trying to teach about the sport.
The great thing about the festival experience here is that there's 24 clubs from all over the country. A lot of the clubs, about 14 of them or so, are regional ones that we typically would play during the year or might play every couple years, might be in our league, that type of thing, but we don't get to see them all the time. So this is a great place to come and see them and hang out with them and just enjoy friendship that we don't usually see. This is great because fans who come can see all kinds of different teams and also see all kinds of different baseball at the same time.
This is really a family experience. There's a few festivals that we go to where every team knows every other team and they're friends and they hang out, but this one, you're talking about 24 teams from across the country. You're talking about people you might see once every 5 years or teams that you play 8 times a season. And it really is a family atmosphere. We stay at the same hotel as a couple of the other teams. I bring my cornhole boards. We barbecue at the pool on Saturday night and try to get everybody together. We had to have 50 people there last night. That's the biggest difference between this and any other festival. Regardless of how good the ball is, regardless of how much work the organizers put in, it's really a family affair.
The festival experience it's hard to explain. We're a brotherhood. We see guys that we only see once a year, and it's here. Every once in a while we'll have teams from New York that we make it a point to play. But you get away from life for the weekend. You're not worried about bills, you're not worried about cell phones. You're here to play baseball, and it's because you love the game of baseball, you love the history of baseball. Generally, I just look forward to good baseball. So whether we win or lose, I like a well-contested game that has good defense, good hitting, and most importantly, good sportsmanship.
I wanted to do something that was team-oriented. I wanted to do something to help get in shape, and I like history and baseball, so for me it was obvious. As soon as I saw it, I went for the first match to just watch them, and they threw me right out in the field in my modern dress, and I was hooked from there.
One of the best parts about this, baseball is one of the few sports that celebrates its history. And this allows you to combine playing competitive baseball with going back through over 100 years of baseball history.
So with that said, I like to jokingly say, in this game of 19th century baseball, certainly the early 1860s, we play with bare hands. They didn't invent the baseball glove yet, and big bats and no brains.